Hey, today is January 6, 2013. I'm going to be replacing the rear bushings and the trailing arm of my Porsche 914. It's a 1973. I replaced the trailing arm bushings on the other side, but here's the last two that I have in the package. No one has done this tutorial on YouTube yet, so I'm going to try to go through the step by step. I'm going to jack up the car, take the wheel off, and I'll continue when we get done with that. Okay, what I've done, now the wheel's off. Went ahead and I took off this brake line here, as you can see. It's a 10 millimeter wrench. I went and capped this off with a couple of caps, stuff about here at the hardware store. And I stuck one inside the brake area here too. You see the white one right there? When I had disconnected emergency brake, I took this little piece off here that goes to the brake line itself. That's going to slide down and out. Get that out of the way, let that hang there, be okay. And then now I'm going to go ahead and take off the bolts to the back of the transmission back here. I'm going to take those off, and then I keep that connected, then I go ahead and I'll go ahead and take this shock bolt off here too. And then start to, on these bolts here and this other side in there, which you can probably see here, right there. And then there's some ones under here. Those bolts there. Those are all 17 millimeter. And we'll continue in just a minute. Okay, I went ahead and this is probably not the right metric, but a 7/8 wrench. Worked on these bolts here to loosen those bolts there, and the one behind over here. That one right here. Pretty tough to get off. I let them soak with some 3M lubricant. So these I took off as well. These bolts in here, those are loose. And I took off the bolt to the shock there, as you can see. Where is it? Here it is. So I once again let them soak for a little bit because it's kind of a bitch to get these off, and you should. And tucked all the wires or the brake line back there, and just have little clips that are held into place, so don't lose those clips. Put these out of the way. So now I'm going to tackle the bolts underneath this, and those are 17 millimeter. And once that is done, I usually mark, or you can see where all of this has been through the years, set in its place. So when you take the bolts out, it leaves kind of a good pattern to make sure that if you do it in alignment, you can take it in. But I'm going to see if I can cheat it and just go with the same pattern and go from there. But the top bolts in here, there's a one way the bolts fit from the bottom up with a 17 millimeter. So, and there's a shimmy in between these here, and there's a shimmy on the very bottom, and I'll show those to you in a minute. But I was able to also to inspect all the underneath the transmission with the ground straps, starting wires, etc. So it'd be a good time to kind of inspect the bottom of the car too. Check your boots. Everything else is good. Okay, this is part 3 or 4. I went ahead and undid the bolts, which are here, 17 millimeter. And it looks like this underneath. There we are. Right there, see those bolts? 1, 2, 3. And it kind of starts to wiggle like this a little bit out. I've undid the bolt there. And I kept the bolt in the shock. It kind of holds this from everything slamming onto your exhaust pipes here, and I keep that. I haven't broken that seal yet for that grease CV joint. And there's also a little gasket you want to make sure you keep in there. It keeps the grease from slinging out. Okay, so that bolt's also loosened. I'm going to take on and screw this bolt in here. You guys can see it coming out. There it goes. Here's the bottom plate here, and here's the little the shimmy that goes in between the body here and the little plate right there. This fits in there. and you can see where there's little points for adjustment needed, but I just, oops. Oh, I'm sorry, this way. And that little tab out there seems to stick out, just like the other one. So again, I'm going by these marks. When I reinstall it, this goes first, that goes in the bottom, along with these two. And this is what this looks like. Kind of loose. And now, I'm going to see about breaking this thing apart. So, let's see if I can keep this camera going while I do that. I'll need someone to hold this camera, so give me a quick second. Go under here. You can see all this here. So this assembly, all these bolts are done, that's done. So I take this shock bolt out. I'm going to take it off yet. I'll just leave that as such. Now look at how over here, this part fell down. This part comes down, and that's undone. So then this kind of take a little tap or snug pull, and then this just comes out of here. Let's see. That. It's been here since 1973, so it's a little bit sticky. That's gonna go in that. So that's what that looks like. It's showing here. Right in there where it's shiny, it was wearing and it was a lot of play. And look up in here, all that shiny is because the wheel was rubbing inside that fender. And now look at this. See how that is supposed to be centered, but it's that old rubber is worn out. So this is the assembly. We can check on this side now. Actually, let's take that bolt off. When I put the other side on, I didn't have to heat anything. It just kind of slipped on with some grease. Don't lose these bolts. This has a lip on it, and this is flat. This flat went like as such. The lip was on the outside. So let's look at this. It looks okay. That's on the outside, remember. So that's where we are. So I'm going to go ahead, and that's true on this. You have to heat that up and burn it, and then it'll come out, or this other side too. So I'm going to go ahead and burn that out. I might tape a little bit of it, but it takes about 10-15 minutes, and then I'll get back to it and I'll show you how to put the rest in. Okay, we're burning this out with a little torch, and we'll see if that burn if I can tap it through with a wood grip. We burned it out. Here's the axle. Here's the pieces of old bushing. It was a bitch to get out, so we tapped this in with a hammer, being careful not to touch these threads to get a hole, and then I squirted WD-40, which also is flammable, squirted it inside there, let it burn a little bit, and it got the lip off of these. I kept doing that all the way through, squirting it down so it would go down there and penetrate. Took us about 10 minutes to burn it out. Bring the camera over here on this side. This was initially like this, with the old bushings, which were rubber like this. There's a polygraphite bushings, and they go on as such. So we had to burn those old ones out. This is what you have. I recommend taking a grinder like we had, a brush grinder, and grinding off all the crap that's on here, including the threads, so it's a nice fit. The sand is in here, get a rag, wipe that out. Check bolts here, wipe a bunch of stuff down in there. Not really a show car, so I didn't really worry about any of this, but be careful if you keep this attached, because this guard for the disc can sometimes bend. Make sure your cap stays on top of that, your reservoir. Just being careful, basically. So this is basically some Valvoline GM grease. I grease the inside of each one of these. Okay, shot of this. Give them more light. I didn't have a right tool for this, so a Joe Weider I used for my weights was perfect. It fits through. That's what I usually use to tap that down. So Alec, can hold that for a second. Okay. Just hold it with that. There you go. I'll open this vise up here a little bit so the axle can go through, but yet this grommet is not going to back out. So hold this here and tap it lightly. That backed it down a little bit so we can put it back in a little bit. So let this down.